Just a couple house cleaning rules. This is the lectern up here, so if anyone needs to talk tonight, you need to come up to that, and you need to have your cell phones off. Thank you. Okay.
Dilly dilly.
The first item on the agenda is a public hearing, a liquor license and special amusement permit for Jeffrey Hurd and Narrows Tavern. Can I entertain a motion to open a public hearing?
Make a motion.
Have a second? Discussion? All those in favor? Okay. I'd entertain any public comments. Is the owner here? No? Any public comments? I'd just like to say they got excellent fried clams, but I'm just... Okay, seeing no comments, anything from the board? Okay, entertain a motion to close the hearing on that.
So moved.
Have a second? Discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. We act on that liquor license. Entertain a motion on that.
I move approval of the liquor license for Jeffrey Hurd, DBA The Narrows Tavern.
Have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. The second hearing is a liquor license for Bennett Collins Harvest Moon Pizza. We entertain a motion to open that hearing.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Any public comments?
Is this the one up at,
He's moved down on Route 1 now, south of town.
where?
Well-tempered kitchen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay, yep.
Way over there?
Yeah, am I in the right place, right in?
Yes.
Right in Waldeboro.
Yes, you're in the right.
Do we know if he's doing an outdoor thing this summer?
Don't know.
Serving, having
I
an
don't know.
outdoor pizza? Okay.
Any more comments? Have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Entertain a motion to act on the liquor license.
I move approval of the liquor license for Bennett Collins, DBA Harvest Moon Pizza.
Have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. And the final one is a liquor license for Karen Clark, Waldeboro Farmers Market Association. That's for a motion on that.
Move we open the public hearing.
Have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Any public comments?
She's a little squirrely.
Melvin's not here.
Yes, I'm Karen Clark, I'm the market manager for the Waldeboro Farmers Market. And we're not actually going to serve wine or liquor, we're actually selling it. So closed bottles of wine at Farmers Market receive a limited liquor license, and that's what this is. So it will be a closed liquor license. However, our vendor does have tastings on their site. They're located in York, Maine. So it's the Weekly Bridge Distillery. And they have 6 types of distilled alcohol that they'll be serving. So buy 1 bottle each with your friends and then have parties at each of your houses.
Nice.
And one of the rules of the state, in order to have a liquor vendor at a farmer's market, you have to have at least 6 other vendors selling produce, meats, and other varieties of things. And we do meet that criteria.
Yep, I read your list, yeah. Any other public comments?
Is this being moved on to our property here?
Yes.
Any more comments?
I just want to say I think it's a great idea.
Where is everybody gonna park?
Just like we do during the elections, we went over it with the department heads and they're all, they
And
said that they
and
can
this is
support
good
it.
for the ambulance and the police and the fire
Went all
department.
through it with all of them approved before I even said yes to Karen. And we discussed this at a meeting back when it came up before the board. Yes, all the department heads are very well informed and able to handle it.
I think it'd be better, good visibility.
It's gonna be much better visibility,
It's gonna be good.
correct.
It would be good
I
for
knew all
Waldeboro.
this. I
And
just
I'm really
wanted to
happy
Make sure the.
that,
public-
you know, we're gonna have fresh fruits and vegetables so I can just run outside. I didn't know about the wine. That might be a problem during the working hours, but okay.
Any more comments? See none, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? motion to act on the liquor license.
I move we approve the liquor license for Karen Clark, DBA Waldoboro Farmers Market Association.
The second. Discussion. All those in favor? Thank you. Number 4, adjustments to agenda. Anything there? Seeing nothing?
Oh,
Sorry.
wait, no, it's not an
Okay.
adjustment.
Citizens' comments? Say Karen again.
It's always Karen.
I know.
She likes those
Karen Clark.
lecterns.
I'm also the fundraiser involved with the Waldoboro Day Committee,
Yay.
and I wanted to read the thank you card that we have for the town of Waldoboro. I want to say thank you, Select Board, Town of Waldoboro. The Waldoboro Day Committee wants to thank you for your generous donation of $1,000. Your help has made it possible for the community celebration to be a fantastic success. So we wanted to thank you. We have a wonderful little card.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for passing it in the budget.
Yeah. Okay. Any other citizens' comments? Seeing none. Select board comments? Do you have something, Jan?
I could come up with something.
If I caught you off guard.
Well, actually, somebody this week asked me what it was like being on the select board, and I think it may have been a student. And I said it's a wonderful learning opportunity, and it is. I think it's a great learning opportunity, and I said it's a time when you have to put your personal opinions aside and listen to both sides of what people have to say and make the determination based on the town, not your own thing. And I think that's how we got into the conversation about how we all have our personal biases and our things, and sometimes it's best to put those aside. And I said I've learned a whole lot about things that I never would have learned about before. And so it's a valuable learning experience, I think, for all of us.
Okay. Abby?
I just want to bring up, I've been working on, for a couple of years, about hopefully getting alewives harvested back in the river. There's been a huge success in reintroducing them and bringing them back, and I think sooner or later, we're gonna want to be able to harvest that product.
Yes.
I've been meeting with
Absolutely.
DMR. I got a email today from the biologist at DMR, and we're hopefully in the next couple weeks, we're gonna walk the river, look at, see what issues we have, all the way to the Washington Pond, and opening up habitat. So, and hopefully fill data gaps that we have as far as counts and stuff like that. No, scaling, they kept up.
Okay.
It's, the scaling is kept right up to date, but
That's good.
not to DMR standards, but they are
Laying up
being taken.
station stuff.
Yes, but, yeah, we're gonna walk the river all the way to the Washington Pond and see what hazards and stuff like that there is to open up habitat for them, and hopefully get our numbers up. They were really high a few years ago, and counts haven't been done, so we really don't know what's there. But that stuff needs to be done, so, but anyways, I just wanted to make everyone aware that I still have been working on it. It's just, it's not as easy as one would think, even though we do the work and DMR backs us on this, it still has to go to the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, and they have to approve us to do it. So it's not just at the state level, it's at the federal level as well, allow us to do it, so. It's not gonna be just it could be we could possibly do this in 3 years, 3 to 5 years of having the data gaps filled and do a presentation down to Atlantic States.
I know it's a wicked process. We went through this years ago, and there was just
Yep.
so many hoops to jump through.
Yep, it
And,
is, and I've had to deal with it for the last 2 years, and I finally got the biologist to give us a criteria of what he wants to see to justify us opening up, so.
Will we
And,
have counters again?
There's a process that I'd like to see done is towns usually have to put it out to bid, to have somebody harvest. What I would like to see, and which the state would like to see, is a 10-year contract with this individual, whoever bids on it, and they do the work.
They do the counting?
They do the counting, it costs the town nothing. They
Yeah.
do the work, they get the contract to harvest the product after the data is filled. If they do not do that, they do not qualify for
Did
it.
MVLT do that? One of the
Yes,
Mayor
the
Corps
volunteers used to do a lot of
volunteers
the
used to
counting.
count, yeah.
We often
When
worked
it was
with Lloyd
visible.
Davis Trust.
Right,
They were the funding organization that really made things happen.
But the money dried up, I
Right.
believed, and
Yes, it
so,
did.
so people were being paid to do it. This way, the individual that gets the contract has to do the work in order to be able to harvest. If he doesn't do the work, he doesn't harvest. So,
The person that does Warren, who's very successful
yeah,
at
he
it.
lives in Waldeboro.
Yes, and he already spoke to us, he would do this, just like Abden says,
Yep.
it's no charge, and
Yep.
they do all the legwork for
Oh,
you.
nice.
So,
And,
yeah, they do all the work, and all it does is just, you know, they gotta fill the data gaps, they know where to fill it,
Right,
so.
and he's a professional, he does it
Yep,
very
he's been
good.
doing it for
Yeah.
at least 20 years, at least 20. So,
Do you have something, Bob?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Abner a question. When you say, do the harvest,
Mm-hmm.
you don't mean he goes out and does it. You mean he
Whoever does the bid.
supervises the guys who are pulling the stuff out, right?
no, he will do the data work that is required,
Right.
and he will be the harvester. He's the one
That's during the data collection
before,
phase.
after.
Even after.
After the harvest, they have to continue the data regardless, and this is what's happened with this area, is the data,
A gap.
there was such a huge gap that the
Right.
stuff that hasn't been done, it needs to be caught up.
Yeah.
And it has to continue to be caught up to justify the harvest.
Okay.
It's the same thing they do in Warren with the guy that,
To justify the annual harvest
Yes.
in terms
Yep.
of what you're
Yep.
allowed to take out.
yes,
Okay,
exactly.
I get that.
Yep,
And the limit this year was what, 900?
nothing. No, no.
Okay.
No, we do not harvest. We cannot harvest.
We haven't
Right.
harvested for,
But guys are pulling elvers out of the river.
Elvers, Elwes.
Oh, sorry.
Elwes,
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 sorry.
Elwes.
God, thank you.
Elvers was a whole different story. That was a
Got it.
battle in
Okay.
itself.
so,
Got it.
so where do they still harvest down by the bridge? Will that be where they harvest?
When, it's yet to be determined.
Yep.
I've got a couple locations that might be issues, but hopefully Julie can work her magic and work that out. Easy
Somehow I knew
access-
that was coming this way.
Easy access.
No, the alewives, I just knew they were swimming this way.
Downwind.
That was the first,
They go
that was the
uphill.
first, that was the first thing that I was sent to. I,
Um, The biggest issue they have is not so much getting them to
First meeting.
the falls, to the fishway, it's what happens above that. How many actually make it to the pond? So we gotta figure out a place before the pond that narrows up that can be counted as well. That's a huge issue.
Yes.
They're on Noyes Road, I'm sure you know that crossing, because there are, I mean, hundreds of them
Yep.
that don't.
But they all don't go there, they
Okay.
go to Washington Pond as
Yeah.
well. So, and that's the issue is, if, actually Washington Pond is 3 times bigger than Madomic Pond,
okay.
so it's a huge habitat for them.
Yeah.
And they would like to see that opened up, and that would increase our chances of possibly being able to harvest. We're not sure if they're actually getting to Washington Pond. I think there's an issue right on 220 in Washington where they got the fire department has a dam there or something that may be preventing them from doing that. So, but we gotta look at that with a biologist, and he's gonna point out the issues we do have, and hopefully work on fixing
That'd be
them.
fun. I watch them go up the falls in my
But-
backyard.
Right, but regardless of that, we still have to do the data,
Exactly.
regardless of we find the places that are barriers for them. But that's all I have.
Yep.
But I
Thank
gave you
you.
guys information that I got today.
Yep. And for us that are in the lobster industry, I mean, we get these alewives in Warren on that end, Jefferson on that end, Damascotta on that end, around, I mean, they're all around us. And we should be doing that right here like we used to.
Yep.
And like Abden says, it's the data, we got that gap, you gotta fill all that, but I'm glad to see something's happening. Thank you
you'd
very
rather buy
much.
local.
Buy
Real
local.
local.
Sure.
Real local, yes. Okay. Any other comments from the board? Julie?
So I just have a couple of small items. Our newsletter is nearly complete. If anybody on the select board has not submitted your article, please get it to me as soon as possible. That would be lovely. We are applying for a SAFER grant through FEMA, and that is a SAFER grant application for recruitment and retention of our firefighters. It's going to be we're going to be the host applicant along with the town of, with the Friendship Fire Department. So that's pretty exciting. Our CTC committee on April 26th is hosting a Fiber 101 night where you can learn all about fiber optic in town. Please attend. It's CTC and LCI will be putting on their fiber info meeting for those interested, and John Lawrence will be there, as well as
Say the date again.
April 26th, as along with other famous CTC board member Ruben Marr and Chief Glidden and
Richard Glidden, yes.
and one other person.
Yeah,
Richard Hofstas. So come out and they will be very informative. I attend their meetings somewhat regularly, and I'm always, I kind of feel like I'm on the Star Trek Voyager and everybody's talking about all kinds of hyperspeed, and then I realize it's about fiber optic and not outer space travel, and I get a little discouraged, but that's okay.
What's the location on that?
Right here.
Okay.
Well, actually out in the foyer, technically.
Okay, at the town office.
Yes.
Okay.
My other exciting news is we are producing solar energy at the landfill. And to date, as of a few hours ago, we've produced lifetime, since we've been operational, 14.28 MWH. We have saved, and this is the equivalent of 557 trees if we planted them. And our CO2 emission has saved 10,040.46 kg of CO2 emission.
Like you knew what that meant, right?
But what it means is that we're generating enough electricity that we're not paying for electricity.
Nice, but
So it's kind of interesting. And if you come in, there's a little television screen next to Melody's window. And that's what it says. And it gives you nice little pictures and it shows you nice little graphs. And, you know, it's all kind of exciting. But what I just want to say what's exciting about it is that it started out in our Economic Development Committee. And we were doing a power purchase agreement. And it was something different for the town of Waldoboro. And I think it's something that in the past, people might have said, oh, they're not going to be able to do that, or they might not do it quite right. I like to hold it up as something that we did right. It's something that everybody supported. You know, there was a lot of discussion whether it was going to go here, where it was going to go, and then, you know, one of our department heads came in and said, on top of the landfill, and that was a fabulous idea. So I just wanted to report on that because we finally have that information to share with you. And I think that is all. Oh, Pine Street Landing. Pine Street Landing bids went out today. So they are out and about. We will be working on Pine Street Landing. There won't be closures for any more than a day or two. And we have 48 hours notice, and there's a certain period of time where we'll be posting it 48 hours in advance of any closures.
The landing being closed
The
down.
landing being closed
And
down.
that's because of the cement pillars for the landing itself to be installed.
And the cement blocks.
What- what's-
Yes, the cement blocks, yeah.
what's the date that's expected to be done, complete?
September 19th, I think,
I can't remember.
based on the bids. So we'll know better. We have a pre-bid meeting, and as soon as the construction meeting we have, I will let everybody know when they should be able to give us tentative dates. But everybody will be well informed about what's going on. We will be posting down at the landing, so I just want you to know that there will be times when it is closed.
Okay. Thank you. Number 8, consent calendar.
Make a motion to accept.
Have a second?
Before you do that,
Discussion. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to point out to you 2 things. One is on the agenda, on the minutes of not March 13th, I'm sorry. March 26th. I'd like you just to notice that when we had our budget meeting, the Budget Committee and the Select Board asked for a little bit of clarification And one of those things was to include not who, but what was in the budgets as far as employees. 5 part-time employees, 1 full-time, 2 part-time employees, so that people could better understand what they're voting on. That has been accomplished on this particular one. We checked with the MMA, and that is what they recommended how we phrase it. The other thing that has been an ongoing issue, and it was the first issue on my very first day that I dealt with, when one of our local clamors came in. If you'll notice on the March 27th meeting, we have shellfish. This budget is fully funded by license fees. And it goes on to explain that it's funded by the license fees. That the public funds are, from the general fund, are not utilized. So I think that's something that has been an issue for years that we've resolved. The only other issue that we have with that was requested, and it came from Richard, is that it would be nice to include something, because as you know, the EMS also has revenue, and he has requested that maybe we have something that explains that on his line item. So that might be something we'd like to consider. But I just wanted to point out those changes. We did take your advice. We called who we needed to call to find out if we could do it, and that was addressed.
Thank you.
We wait for discussion to talk about it, the minutes.
Yeah, we're
for the
on
consent.
discussion now. yeah.
We are? Okay. On Tuesday, March 13th, that meeting was held on Wednesday, March 14th. And it has here that I seconded a motion, but I wasn't there.
Tuesday, March 14th.
So, and you'll
Aren't
notice
you
my name
special?
is not, right? Well, I don't
Usually
usually,
in spirit.
okay, I think one might be the second one I've ever missed, but, yeah, my name's not up here.
Right, but you're in there.
And so it
Okay.
was Wednesday, it was a different date. That was
Gotcha.
the Tuesday meeting that was
It was the
held
14th.
on Wednesday.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other errors,
Nope.
comments?
But I read these things.
We will fix that.
Yeah. I thought you might wanna. Not a big deal.
It is
Any
good
other
that you read them,
discussion?
though.
Yeah, I read everything.
Do you have something, Bob?
Yeah, do we want to reintroduce the motion to indicate we're approving the consent calendar as amended, so?
Again, it don't matter. It's
Okay.
all fixed. I think we're all good.
Okay.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, old business, schedule, is it downtown meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Suggested May 22nd.
If you recall, we had a request from some of the downtown art galleries and a couple of the business owners, but not the entire downtown area, to discuss some of the downtown issues. We said that we would have a meeting. I'd like to have it on May 22nd, because I think that would give us enough time. We want to send out little postcards and invite everybody, all the concerned parties, to the meeting. And this was to deal with some of the planning for paving, traffic concerns, and things like that. That way we can actually have a good discussion. So my question is that date okay with all of you, and at what time would you like to start?
Is that a Tuesday, one of our regular meetings?
It's one of our regular meetings,
our
unless
second
you wanted
meeting in May.
unless you wanted a special meeting.
5 o'clock.
It's 5 o'clock, things are hard.
I'm fine.
That's probably all right.
I was just thinking that with the businesses, it might be nice to start at 5, because a lot of them close and they can come right here, they don't have to go home and then
So
go
we'll have
back.
it right here.
Right here.
Okay.
So start at 5 o'clock?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 9.2, we all good on that? 9.2, approve placing marijuana petition ordinance on warrant.
I think John wants to speak on that.
Okay.
It's a time on that. I see it.
Good evening, I'm John Lawrence. I'm a 10-year resident of this town from away. And I was an active member of this group that worked on getting the petition signed by enough residents that are voting registered residents so that we could have this referendum vote in the June election that's coming up. And I guess I want to make sure everybody is clear, although the wording of the way it may appear, that it's important for everybody to understand the purpose of this. There's been a lot of controversy in my mind about whether we want to have commercial marijuana ventures in this town or not. Being a member of the Economic Development Committee also, I've heard lots of talk about how much money we can make if we did. But I've also heard more recently from families around this town, when I was collecting signatures, how much heartache there is in this town over the exposure to marijuana in their lives. I'm also one who was here at the planning board meeting in January, and then the other one in February, where there was a lot of discussion about the fact that I was wrong when I got up and spoke to say that the town had already voted against marijuana when we had a state referendum vote last fall. And I was told that I was wrong by the planning board, and I went home and checked it again and found out I was right. So I think there's a lot of misconception about the details involving marijuana and what the people want. And more important than that, I want everybody in this town to realize that this ordinance would prohibit the operation of retail marijuana social clubs, retail marijuana establishments in the town of Waldoboro. The ordinance would not, and I underscore not, prohibit the lawful use of cultivation of recreational marijuana for personal use pursuant to the Maine Marijuana Legislation Act. And it would not prohibit any lawful use, possession, or conduct pursuant to the Maine Medical Use of Marijuana Act. So we hope that this vote will give the town a better vision for planning in the future. And there will have to be ordinances accordingly based on the outcome of that. And I hope to participate in the writing of ordinances in the future in this town. I've had experience in doing that in other towns that I've lived in around the United States. And I think this is going to be a very pivotal situation for this town. And I can also end by saying I was surprised by the number of signatures that we received in this town. There were from people that are very anxious to be on this for the purpose of their own personal beliefs. And sometimes, and we got signatures from well over 100 in this town, ourselves, my wife and I, Marcia. And I would say that what I've heard in this room over the last year has been conflicting with what the feeling in the community is that I visited. Thank you.
Thank you.
And by the way, the legislature voted on that today.
You did.
That state
Yes,
law.
they did.
Will we?
Yep, it was 112 to 34, I believe, was the vote. But it's gonna go to the Senate, and then I believe probably the governor's gonna veto it, but there's enough to override the veto, so. The way it looks, so.
Okay. So for tonight, this is for putting this on the ballot, right?
Correct. And I don't know,
Do you have
Eileen,
something, Eileen?
how it's going to be attached? What you learned from the MMA?
Right, there can't be anything in the, underneath the article itself. Legally, we could print the entire ordinance, but because of the number of pages we now have, that people don't vote because it's too long, would add like 2 more pages to our ballot to just print that ordinance. So we can't do an excerpt, but the warrant, those 2 pages must be posted everywhere we post the warrant. And something that short could be added to the town report to follow the warrant, so people can read the entire ordinance that they would be voting on. So that was what MA suggested. So we can, like I said, we can print the whole ordinance in the town report right behind that warrant, so people will see it, be able to read the whole thing.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Yep. Does that mean that when we go into the booth to vote, that all those papers will be there, so we'll be able to read it there in the booths?
She's saying no.
No, that's not what it means.
Oh, okay.
It'll be on the walls on your way in.
Right,
So we
as you
have to
walk in.
do we have to tell people to read it on their way in? I'm
Go
just
ahead,
asking
Eileen.
because,
Well, that would be up to
It- 'cause
them
it's-
if
if
they
you-
want to. I mean, it
Oh,
says, do
okay.
you want to prohibit this, and, you know,
okay.
yes
I
or
was just-
no, yes, I want to prohibit, no, I don't. So if you have
Okay.
feelings on marijuana, I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
All right, two
Yeah.
pages was like, oh, two
Yeah.
pages.
Yeah, right, I know.
I can
Bob.
read the excerpt if you want.
Can we post it on the website
Yeah.
along with
Yeah.
everything else that's
Yes,
up there?
when the-
So most
when
people
the warrant goes up,
will
Yeah.
have
that
access
ordinance
to
would
it.
go up.
We'll go with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right, that's
The law, moot point for that.
Did you have something, Bob?
That's all I had.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay, yeah,
If
okay.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There's something else in it.
Yeah. I'd like to see that. Can I make a motion?
Yes.
I keep it up.
I'd make a motion that we approve placing the marijuana petition ordinance on the warrant for the June ballot.
Second that motion.
Discussion? See no discussion, all those in favor? Thank you. Okay. New business, 10.1, school resource officer presentation. Chief?
Actually, it's Chris Spear is our school
Okay.
resource officer. He's
Well, I
gonna be
didn't know
coming
who was
on up.
coming
And Chris was invited after Selectman Bob Butler and I attended a school board meeting where he did a fabulous presentation on what he does at the school.
Here's a report that I submit on an annual basis to the school board, and I was asked to present. Like Town Manager Julie had mentioned by Bob.
Thank you.
This is something it's a flyer I pass out at the parking lot exit. It was on a Friday afternoon back in September, right before Labor Day. I'd already been up at the school for a couple of weeks at that point. I've had the pleasure of being the school resource officer for almost 4 years now. I was hired on July of 2014, completed all the basic training. Prior to that, I worked for Kennebec Behavioral Health. I was a probation officer and I was a caseworker for the state. In meeting with Chief, I felt like this was a great hybrid position for me to kind of get my fix as far as law enforcement, and then also apply my social work background to working up at the school. I'm aware that's upside down. I'll show everyone this, but basically, I put a board together of some of the things, some of the items that might be present at some of the high schools within Lincoln County. Madomic is not like any other high school. I have the pleasure of working primarily at the high school. About 90% of my time is spent there. Right across the parking lot, it's the middle school. I'm called over there on a regular basis, typically a couple of times a week. I've been to every school within the school district. Prescott School, the Union School, the Friendship, the Miller School as well. The Chief and Officer Hesseltine do the DARE program at both the middle school and the Miller School. So we have excellent presence as far as all the police staff getting out to the various schools. I love my job because it's proactive in a sense that I'm not sitting there in light of some of the recent tragedies. I'm not there acting as an armed security guard to be reactive. I have conversations with the students on a daily basis. I have lunch with them in the cafeterias, share their same bathrooms. I'm an employee of Waldoboro Police, and my salary is subsidized through the school district. So the great thing about that is during the school year, I'm acting on behalf of Waldoboro PD, but I'm actually at the school. So I've done everything from be a very interim substitute to do crisis counseling, transporting students home if they're in crisis. an additional resource outside of administration, the guidance counselors, suite social workers, and then also the school-based social workers. So I call it wraparound services. So unfortunately, there have been cases where students, I may have had an actual call with them or their families over a weekend on a night that I was called out, and then I'm seeing them in school the very next day. So it could have been a tragic event, or it could have been just a traffic stop. But the great thing is just for them to see a familiar face outside of the school, and I'm not always in blue. When I'm up at the school, I'm wearing a polo shirt and khakis. I try to get away with wearing sneakers during the warmer months rather than boots. So I consider myself open door, approachable. If they're having a difficult time, oftentimes I, am actually the first person that they want to talk to. So I consider myself a straight shooter. They know they're going to get an honest answer. A couple, just not to get into the politics of, not to get into the politics of marijuana use and abuse and some of the side effects, but just some of the different items. Juuls are now the what they consider the iPod of vaping devices. So here was a vaping device. This is still commonly used. This one is as well. But Juuls now, I've had a lot of parents come in and say, I have no idea what this is. This is brand new technology for me. It looks like a little USB port. It looks like a zip drive. You actually plug this into the side of your computer and it charges the smoking device. Comes in multiple flavors. This was originally marketed for people to quit smoking. Unfortunately, all the studies point to is it's a way that, the smoking commercials of the 50s, the cowboy on the horseback and everything else, not allowed anymore. That brand new movie, what's that movie, Chief? Ted Kennedy?
Okay.
Chappaquiddick.
Chappaquiddick. So part of the disclaimer of that movie is, smoking? What's that tagline in that?
Smoking is hazardous to your health.
No, but they say some adult smoking, like for the actual, for the actual movie itself. So, but with the vape pens, what's happening now is it's just a new marketing thing for the companies to reach a younger audience. A lot of different side effects, and not all those are known as of yet. Different ways that marijuana is marketed through edibles. Unfortunately, if someone has access to a credit card, they can buy edible marijuana over the internet because there's no age verification. The point of sale is not like a retail establishment like Town Line, something along those lines. If they have access to a computer and a credit card, they can purchase a lot of this different stuff. Gummy bears now, as far as edibles, candy bars. There are some forms of marijuana that you can actually vape. So rather than smoking the actual herb itself, they extract all of the THC concentrate from marijuana itself. So you can actually smoke THC with a 75% purity versus the 7% that was out there 30 years ago. So the concentration levels have gotten significantly higher. So dabs, I just heard. So if people call it dabs.
What's called the dab?
It's literally at the tip of the pen. What they do is hash or hashish. What they actually do is you can get a huge press, and it would be on a huge industrial scale, almost like a old school cider press where you're putting apples in or grapes, and they're actually crushing that down. But they're doing it with CNC machines, and they're actually squeezing out all the THC concentrate. And that's where you're getting into dabs. Butane hash oil, there's funnels that they'll use or glass pipes. They'll put in butane oil or the actual gas itself that extracts all the purities from the marijuana. So you're getting pure THC at the end result of that. So you could literally just smoke what would be on the tip of the pen versus a marijuana cigarette, and you're going to feel the exact same effects. There have been marijuana overdoses where if people will consume, usually it's through an edible version. So marijuana affects everyone differently, same way that alcohol does. So your age, your gender, your body weight, frequency of use are all different variables on how it might affect someone. I've run into people out in the road that I know smoke on a daily basis, and they had literally just smoked, and there's no ill effects. They're acting relatively normal as far as someone who's impaired, versus someone else who might smoke a couple of times a year, and you can definitely tell that they're under the influence of marijuana. So it's significant impairment. Not someone that I would want to feel comfortable having behind the wheel. So.
And those vape pens, if they're smoking the marijuana oil, is very undetected. There's no smoke and there's no odor.
That's very true, very true. So unfortunately, there have been instances where people, it's not, if you're smoking a marijuana cigarette or a tobacco cigarette, when you're exhaling that, there's that smoke. You can walk in, you can smell that, you can detect that. The vape pens, it almost smells like someone chewing a piece of gum or mouthwash, depending upon what flavor they infuse
And it's vapor,
products
it's
with.
not, it's vapor, it's water. So
It's steam,
disperses
basically.
easy.
It's like steam.
Yep, yep.
So essential oils, some people use oils for their house, grapefruit or whatever else it might be. It's on the same lines as that. So, and it disperses very quickly.
Yep.
So there have been a couple of cases of students actually smoking, you know, in the back of the bus or actually in the classroom in one particular case, and you know, just coming up and you just see a puff of the steam, the vape, what they're expelling, and that's the only telltale sign. So.
But they usually do that when the teacher is turned back around.
Correct. Yeah.
That's how long it takes.
It is. Yeah.
You know, she might turn around to face the board, take a whiff, and put it back, and she turns around, and there's nothing there.
Unfortunately, it has happened. So I'm glad to say that Madomic, based on all the research or the different trainings that I've gone to, a lot of the SROs will get together on a regular basis and we compare stories. Madomic's not like any other school as far as drug use or alcohol consumption or even vaping for that matter. Vaping's really taken off. So when I first started 4 years ago, I was anticipating more tobacco use, and I'm glad to say that I did not find that. Unfortunately, vaping now is the hot new thing, and I hope that will be going away very shortly. So a lot of the retailers are really cracking down as far as who they sell it to. There are new law changes with tobacco products to include the vape products as well. So, but in talking to the SROs at Lincoln Academy, Morse, Belfast previously, and the Waldo County SRO, I'm glad to say that the vast majority of the issues that we come up with is usually marijuana and alcohol related. It's not getting into the hardcore drugs at that age, you know, high school and middle school level. So, any questions?
During your presentation to the school board, you guessed, or maybe you had some numbers on hand, to say that the percentage of kids in the schools who actually use this stuff is fairly small.
It is.
Has that changed in the meantime, or do you still see that as being the case?
No, that's definitely still the case. So you do have a small percentile of the student body that are unfortunately daily or if not weekly users of marijuana or alcohol or of a vape product or a tobacco product. That's small in comparison. That's between the 5 to 10% line. 90% of the students, it's experimental use. You have 10% that are going to be at the high-risk category.
Is there a profile?
I wouldn't say there is a specific profile, no. Typically male, you know, the higher risk.
Okay.
So the same way that you're going to, you know, a risk assessment as far as an insurance company. You know, young male drivers is significantly higher than a female driver, you know, going through that. So, but typically it's the younger males.
Is there a health hazard, smoking vape pens?
So, getting back to my kind of weak analogy as far as the cowboy riding Marlboro smoker back in the 50s, it took decades before all that evidence-based health side effects really came out. It was denial, denial, denial. Yep. And then it took all that medical research to say, look, this is going to cause lung cancer, stroke, heart disease, everything else along those lines. Vape products have only been out, and actually the people who designed the Juul vape pen are actually Sanford grads, 2 graduate students from Sanford College. But popcorn lung is a brand new medical ailment that has just come about. There was one study, and I don't think there's enough evidence behind it yet, and I just saw it as a news fact, and that is that the consumption of vape products are 10%, contain 10% more carcinogens than traditional tobacco products. It's like the Wild West, though, as far as all the vape products and everything else along those lines. So I can't speak to that. But I think it's just in the infancy right now. So I think 10 years down the line, we're probably going to have a lot more statistics that are out there. So I can't see how inhaling a nicotine-based product is ever going to be healthy for you, or at least be neutral or better than tobacco. And all the studies for people trying to quit regular tobacco products, what usually happens is they will start off using that, and then it will go back to traditional cigarettes if needed. So it's based on availability. So their only concern once they are basically have that addiction to nicotine is how they're going to get that into their body.
Well, actually, when this first came out, it was only supposed to be temporary for the cigarette smoker.
Yes.
They were supposed to wean themselves off of the nicotine using these vape pens, but somehow they've just want to just use it more and more and more, just for the heck of it.
Mm-hmm. Just like the gum, different levels, different nicotine contents for a piece of chewing gum, so you can actually step down. And that was originally marketed in the same way. But oftentimes it's kind of the cool new thing as far as vaping right now. So.
You have something, Ed?
Yeah, I was just wondering, as an SRO, do you consider yourself the security officer for this high school? In the sense that I noticed you talked about wearing high school casual clothes a while ago. Are you actually on duty as a security officer?
So I perform that function, but I don't like using the term that I'm a security officer. Because you can really take, I'm not an advocate of hiring a veteran to man a metal detector at the front door, because that's reactive. I would much rather have positive dialogue, breaking down the badge with the classroom. So have more positive interactions. If you're just acting solely as a security guard, and say, okay, if an active shooter was to come in, what's the next step? What am I going to do? I think that battle is already lost at that point, because you're 100% reactive. You're just trying to stop that threat at that point in time. My role up there is to try to prevent it from ever getting to that point. I can say that I've broken up, I don't know how, probably at least 100 fights before they've happened, okay? I've acted as an informal counselor for boyfriend, girlfriends, and even guys that have maybe gotten into a fist fight, things along those lines. So my job is more to prevent something like that from happening. I can certainly, as far as my job description and what I do provide security for all the staff and the students, as well as the actual building itself. So. I've taken calls from graffiti to responding to a fight, but ideally trying to step in and try to, stop it before it starts.
Yep. Is all that stuff on that board something you found in the school?
With the exception of the spice package.
Okay.
And that was from a graduate, unfortunately.
Yep.
So it's no different between Madomic, Morse, Lincoln, all of that. Stuff could be found at any school.
And how do you find out? How do you locate where this stuff might be?
So I'm glad to say that most students, getting back to my 5-10% to the 90%, they are there to get a quality education. And they don't condone someone using or possessing those types of items in a school environment.
They'll report it to you.
They will report it casually to me, to a staff person. And then I will follow up with that student along with school administration. So my last thing I ever like to do, and I think the key reason why I'm a good fit up there, I'm not there to write tickets. I do a lot. I work very closely with Martha Takatsu and Eric Powell. They are 2 juvenile community corrections officers, because I work in both Knox and Lincoln for the school. I work very closely with each of them, restorative justice, a lot of the different social service agencies. So I do a lot more informal adjustments, getting people the help, getting people the education that they need, so they can say, hey, look, I don't want to continue using marijuana. I want to kind of get away from that. A lot of people, I encourage them to play sports. So I'll give them an option. Hey, look, you want to try out for baseball, or pursue another avenue. So it's always a last-ditch effort to write a summons to anyone. So I never want to start that. But yeah, getting back, so staff and students. Getting back to my example, there was one student who believed that he could learn through osmosis, and he was taking a nap and he had his head down on a book, and your scenario of the teacher turning around and seeing a vapor cloud. And are you serious? Head down to officer spear. So that's how one of those items came up on the board. So just a really bad choice.
I just want to mention that Healthy Lincoln County also has an anonymous tip line.
Yep.
And sometimes that's more available to parents to use.
So we have that right on the flyer that I made, the LTIP line. And I'm glad that I work very close with Kate Monroe. I had a conversation with Jane, actually. She's with the tobacco committee as well. So the Substance User Prevention Program is something that Healthy Lincoln Partners does. And they actually made the final version of that. I put all the information together. I'm not computer savvy. So they made that little cartoon, and they just grabbed a couple of the other graphics. So I work very closely with them. That LTIP line, I would like to believe it prevented at least one motor vehicle accident. Last summer, Waldoboro PD was called out. We received an anonymous tip. Sergeant Wilson and Officer Hesseltine were on duty. I believe it was a Friday night. We went out to an underage drinking party. There was over 20 students there. All of them were consuming alcohol. There was way too many vehicles in the driveway, and some of them did have a plan on driving home. I'm glad to say I don't believe a summons was written that evening, but we called each and every one of all of their parents, okay? Made sure that they got a safe ride home. We actually transported home a couple of those students. So that's an excellent point. So, and that's come up a couple of different times. At first, I was kind of questioning the LTIP, who wants to, some of the students called it a rat line and things along those lines, but it's getting more and more buy-in now. We've seen great effects to it.
The LTIP, just as the bank robber last week over in New Harbor, she was identified through LTIP. So it's countywide, and it is very effective, and there's a lot of, it does get a lot of use through dispatch.
Okay.
It's not just about getting people in trouble too. It's been used before where a couple are going out on a date, and the gentleman is sexually aggressive, and hey, no, doesn't get the point, and you could just subtly send a text, and then we can arrive and prevent anything else from escalating. So it's worked out very well. Any other questions? Thank you for your time.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 10.2,
That would be the
am
chief.
I right? Waldoboro Drug Outreach Presentation. Is that you, Chief?
Yes.
Okay.
Many people have already, or have obviously realized that we have a severe opiate and drug addiction problem, not just in Lincoln County, not just in Maine, but nationwide. A couple of years ago, actually about a year and a half ago, I spent the summer, we were trying to come up with ways that we can help with this addiction problem, so we came up with the ANGEL program. And the ANGEL program Because if somebody was addicted and they wanted resources, they wanted help, they wanted to go to rehab, we could be the starting point for that. So we would take their drugs, take their paraphernalia, take all that stuff, and get them to a place and connect them with someone similar to a sponsor at AA that would get them into rehab or whatnot. And it's a great idea. Absolutely a great idea. Unfortunately, there's no resources available. There's no beds, there's no rehab places that are gonna take people just off the street. It just doesn't work that way. So, now what do we do? So I wound up with maybe probation and parole with a group out of this doing drug education and rehab, or not, it's not rehab, it's drug education through the jails and the prison. And we linked up with them. And we started a group here in Waldoboro. They had a little group in Wiscasset that was going really well, but that's at the other end of the county. So a lot of the people that are on drugs that are in recovery have lost their driver's license. They don't have transportation. Some of them have lost family ties because of their addiction or their alcoholism, and that's caused problems. So we said, look, that's in Wiscasset on that side of the county. Let's start one in Waldoboro. Well, that was a year ago, April 25th. We started. And it didn't take a lot for me because I'm pretty invested in recovery and in people reinventing themselves. So what we did was we got the people from the jail and the prison to come down, and they're counselors. They're regular counselors. We have probation and parole. We have the pre-release, James Reed from the pre-release, and myself. And we started out, I really feel bad, it's kind of funny when you think about it, that the first meeting we had is we meet every Tuesday morning over at the VFW. And every time, and the first time we met, there were 2 people and 4 of us. So I felt like we kind of ganged up on them. And so I said, yeah, well, this is gonna go really well. The next week we had 6. We have 30 people at our meetings on a fairly regular basis now. And it's been almost a year. And it's the same people coming back. The same people who are dedicated to their recovery. Some of them are working on their recovery just going to our Waldoboro group. Some of them are going to this group, and we've been successful enough in our Waldoboro group and our Wiscasset group that now Demascota PD has sponsored one, and Booth Bay Harbor has sponsored one. So now we have all 4 points of Lincoln County locked down. Tonight we were supposed to have Bill Ellsworth, who is the counselor and in the jails. He was gonna come over and talk to us tonight, but unfortunately for us, but fortunately, Sheriff Dennison called me up about a month or 2 ago and said, I heard you guys got a program over there and it's pretty successful. So we talked about it at length. And tonight they're introducing their program that is mirrored off of ours. Don Kerrigan from Channel 6 News is very interested in our program because I truly believe that given the opportunity and the right guidance, that people can reinvent themselves. And people, just because you are an addict or an alcoholic doesn't mean it's a lifelong sentence. You can reinvent yourself. I'm committed to that. I don't want to think that my whole time in law enforcement, almost 30 years, I'm just locking people up, because we can't warehouse addiction any more than we can warehouse mental health. And those are 2 areas that I'm pretty steadfast on. So we started this group. It's every Tuesday morning, and we're going to continue doing that until we can't do it anymore. But I think that with the help of the Legion, with the help of the town of Waldoboro support, because we've gotten support from the town, and now from all of the surrounding areas, we're going to continue to do the work that we're doing to help with this problem. But I just wanted everyone to know that we do have a problem, everyone knows we have a problem, but that we are doing something about it. We're just not sitting on our hands waiting for people to get caught with drugs or waiting for this. In closing, one of the things that everybody, or a lot of people, I say everybody, that's that's kind of a broad statement. People think that if you've been sober for 6 years, or excuse me, 6 months, and you used to be high every day of your life, and you fall back, and for a week or so, until somebody can get out and get you back on your feet again and dust you off and get you back in meetings, that somehow you failed. I don't believe that for a minute, because relapse is all part of recovery, and people do it all the time. So if we know somebody who's really struggling and they're really making an effort with recovery and they fall backwards, they're not bad people. They're just people. And the relapse is part of the recovery. So instead of thinking of like, well, see, he just went back to it anyway, no, he was high every day of his life for years and years and years. He went 6 months changing that behavior, and he fell off for 3 days. Does that erase that 6 months? Absolutely not. So those are some of the things that we focus about. Some of the successes that we're seeing in the program is we had people, when they got there, they had... I had that effect, and I'm like, okay, let's go to sleep. So anyways, people are getting their driver's license back. They come to a group and they said, I got a job.
Wow.
Those are big steps for addicts. 90% of the people that we have in our group are people who've gotten out of prison, out of jail, or have had some form of interaction with law enforcement in a not so positive manner, that really want to make a change in their life. And this is something that we're doing. It's not just us, but it's our community is really invested in this. So I just want to let you know that we are doing something. We take it very serious. Guys in my department take it serious. Well, at first they're like, oh yeah, great, chief. But they get it now, because it's been a year. It'll be a year and a couple weeks, and it's a great program. I just want to let everyone know that we are doing something and we do care in our town.
Thank you, Chief. 10.3, comp plan review / approval. Bill?
Bill?
I don't know what the chief's done in that, so they're probably gonna know. I don't know what you destroyed up there.
Oh, yeah, I put it this way.
That's funny.
I'd just kind of like you to explain like what process the select board has to go through for this.
Yeah, we're at a point now to get it on the warrant. The select board has to review and consider it and then place it on the warrant. So that's the request that we're making. We have members of the committee here, Jan, Karen, Jen, Ed, and Barbara, and Max is in the back, yeah, sorry. So if there's any questions that come up, we have plenty of committee members here that will be able to answer any of your questions. I would just say very briefly that this is a good plan. It can be a great plan, but it depends on the community of Waldoboro in terms of implementing that and working on some of those items that need to be addressed. And as Jen says, she's a favorite of saying that you know, the plan is just a plan, and as we tackle implementing it, it's going to grow and evolve and change as we respond to you know, different needs in the community, and also as we gather more people getting involved, you know, in the process. So if this does pass at the June meeting, we'll be back in July. The present committee will be back in front of the select board with a list of committees and people and tasks that we have to get started. So that would be a sense of, you know, the job will continue.
So tonight, the process is, we've reviewed this, I assume we've reviewed it, and now any questions we have, we bring up to the committee.
Right.
Then tonight, vote on moving this
to the warrant.
to the warrant.
Yeah.
Could you, Bill, could you just explain what happens next about how there's this timeline because of the warrant, and that we have to post something, what was it you said?
Well, it has to be, correct me, I think you need it by the 13th, is that correct?
By the 13th.
Yeah, by the 13th,
Place it on the
to
warrant.
get it
on the
into
warrant.
the process for the warrant.
Does that help?
Yeah, I just wanted everybody to know that we were stuck in this timeline thing,
Yeah.
that we have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's a good point. The committee has, been working tirelessly. As Barbara will contest, we've been meeting twice a month on that there to a lot of everyone's chagrin to get this pulled together. So there's been a lot of work in the past, 6 or 7 months. Ed wasn't sure we were gonna make it, but we did.
We did,
They've
you
done a
guys
great
did.
job.
And we gotta say too, that Max did a lot of heavy lifting on data, and Bill, and we really raked him over the coals with all the grammar and everything. He was like, okay. Sorry, Max.
So if there's any questions, you don't mind if we can field them also to the committee, because
Right, whatever,
Jan,
don't
feel free
matter.
to, also answer if you like.
Can I just say something? When we first started this process, well, not me, but the committee, I wasn't here. And when the first comp meeting I went to, it was a bit stalled, to be honest. It was a bit stalled. And then we have 2 superstars in the room right now, and that would be Bill and Max. And the energy, and it's funny, it's a low-keyed energy that Max brings, but
Oh, it's changing.
it's very dry, but it is such a pleasure to work with them, and just the response that the comp committee, the conservation committee, the planning board, the EDC has had to Max, and because Bill, you're there, but you're not always there, but Max is always there. He really is becoming the face of our planning and development office, and it's very nice. And this was a contract. We did it a little bit differently. It was an out-of-the-box thought, and we are very blessed to have you. And I just want to say thank you to you, and I also want to say thank you to the committee members, because they really did put in an awful lot of time and effort. And 3 years is a long time. And just thank you very much for all of your service and all of your help.
So, process-wise, we're gonna just go through comments and questions, and go ahead, Abney.
Yeah, I just had a question for Bill. What kind of doors does this open up by us passing this?
It's a good question. Well, three things. There's a statutory requirement that ordinances are based on the comp plan, so that's one. The second is there are a few grants that are dependent on having a comp plan. Some of your natural resource grants from EPA and environmental protection from the state. You have to have a comp plan. And the third is MDOT, Maine Department of Transportation. There's not exactly a quid pro quo with the comp plan, but they are, the first question they typically ask, if we say we want a sidewalk, we want this road done, we want this intersection repaired, they're going to say, where is it in the comp plan? So those are the 3 big ones. On that. And it does show up every once in a while. We have to, when you write a grant in particular, it may not be a requirement that you have one, but they want to know what kind of local planning is in place. So we're always referencing the comp plan in that sense.
Well, I just want to add, we lost an opportunity not too long ago, because we didn't have a comp plan updated and in place. So this is really important to move forward. And yeah, I hope we can do that tonight.
Our watershed-based plan is about to be completed, and if we are going to do anything further
It has to have the comp.
with the federal government and the river, we need to have the comp plan in place. And they'll be getting done right at the same time, and that will give us a lot of wonderful opportunities with the EDA.
Yeah, I think, because the Shellfish Committee put up, I believe, $7,000 or $7,600 for a $32,000 grant.
Correct.
And that opens up a door for us to potentially get hundreds of thousands of dollars for grants. So, and this is a big key to it, I believe.
It is.
Well,
Yeah, I just wanted to add, and I've talked to Bill about this and Jen about this earlier today, and Julie too. This is a great plan. I'm not going to be a fly in the ointment on this at all. I just want to say that there are some things I wish the committee had felt bold enough to talk about frankly and out in front. And one of them is climate change. I think that's going to be a major issue not just for Waldoboro, but for the entire mid-coast. And it's in there, maybe not in so many words, but it's in there. I just wish we'd had the courage to say, this is an issue we need to talk about openly and frankly and deal with over the next 20 years or 30 years or whatever it is. It's a long-term deal. And it could have a real impact on the flats. It could change the entire configuration of the estuary. So that's something it's there, but I felt I needed to say that out loud, that I had that concern.
So,
And-
I'm sorry. Go ahead, go ahead.
You had more.
Another one that's near and dear to John Lawrence's heart. They talk about internet connection, and they talk about high-speed internet, and that's great. I wish that there had been a broader approach to that topic, and that we'd specifically talked about fiber optic. And not just fiber optic as, you know, like where it is, but fiber optic in every single corner of this town. And been open to the idea of exploring more options to make that happen. And it's there, again, perhaps not in so many words, but it's in the plan.
Just yesterday, if I may add to that, I was at a hearing in Augusta put on by DECD with the new Connect Me Authority members, talking about changing the specification for what is considered fully served versus underserved versus unserved. And they were contemplating the idea of reducing the specification down from our 1010 megabits per second back to the FCC federal standard of 25 and 5, which is current, because they think they're misaligned for federal money.
Oh, gee.
And so I got up and spoke about that, and at that hearing, along with some other people, and very strongly in favor of, trying to represent the end community, not the business people, the providers. There were all the providers were covered with their lobbyists, believe me, they were all there. And of course, the cable provider wants it to be 25.5, even though they meet 10 and 100 now, that's spectrum. However, the good news is, at the end of the day, because there were so few people like me there, or technical people in general, there were just business people there, they shelved it. The authority shelved it to give us 30 days to stew over this and come up again and try and vote in favor of whether we're going to keep it. They asked me specifically, I said we should keep it 10-10.
Symmetrical.
And symmetrical, and because the dying technology, the cable on the poles, or the copper on the poles, why should we allow a technology that could be funded into that technology when fiber's the answer for the future? That was my argument.
Okay, well, that's kind of hits on what point I'm trying to make.
But I think we're heading in that direction, but it'll be another month before there is a new understanding, and there isn't any evidence of enough technologists in those meetings, and I hope that more people will show up.
Okay.
Do we have to, just a question, do we have to explicitly state those types of goals in order to work on those goals?
No, the plan, I think as Bob alluded to, there's elements in the plan where we address some of these things, and because there was a committee in place, we kind of are going to give them the responsibility to push that along.
And then I have another question too, because we have studies that have been done over at least the last 8 years on sea level rise up and down the coast.
Right.
Lincoln County has a whole bunch of data on that, which I think is available to all the towns. And that shouldn't stop us from using that data to, you know, address whatever we think our needs are at any point. I think you just wanted us to be explicit, more explicit.
Yeah, I would have voted in favor
You
of
could
it.
have come to a meeting and told us.
Well, sorry.
Shame on you, Bob.
Sorry.
Just saying, they were open.
Mea culpa.
And there were lots of them.
And then the last thing,
Yeah.
and you've mentioned this, is the idea of how important the wetlands are to the river, and how to find a way of integrating wetland perpetuation and conservation into the health of the river and the watershed generally.
Interestingly, I was, when I moved back home to Maine, I was totally struck every year for years by how the wetlands would be dry and then would fill right up in the spring. And I kept thinking, what if we didn't have, I don't know anything really, I'm not an environmentalist, but I was like, what would we do? Where would that water go if we didn't have that there to pick it up?
Yep.
I thought we'd be flooded, except for the one time I got flooded. It didn't work. But
So I've done some reading here, probably not like a lot of you, but is this a time frame if you wanted to alter or delete or add anything? Can you do that yet?
You have that option, absolutely.
You can, and
Yeah.
it will still make
Yeah, as long as, you would have to do it tonight.
by the 13th.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it's still, okay. Okay. So I'm gonna entertain more comments.
Yes, that begs my question I've been dying to ask. I did audit a lot of the hearings, the meetings on this subject when they were putting the comprehensive plan together. And I guess I beg to ask if, in fact, of course, it gets voted in favor, and then you're trying to then rewrite the controlling documents to be, are they gonna be in concert or in compliance? And how do you draw the line between ordinances and this document? How's that gonna go together?
Yeah, the land use section of the plan offers some specific and some general kind of, you know, suggestions or recommendations. So yes, the ordinance is expected to reflect generally those recommendations. You know, again, it's a plan, it's not a prescription. So, you know, we're gonna pull together a committee, and that committee's gonna look just at land use ordinance, whereas the comp plan committee looked at a lot of things. So as you focus, there'll be some refinement that goes on. So that's natural in the process.
The land use ordinances will all have to be voted on afterwards anyway.
Oh, yeah. Actually, John, everything in this plan has to go through the normal approval processes. Right. So
Okay.
if it's an ordinance, it's town meeting, or some things that come in front of the board, or et cetera. So nothing is like automatic. It has to go through.
That's what I meant by in concert
Yeah.
versus
Oh, absolutely.
in compliance with. Right.
This is basically a booklet of recommendations.
Right.
It's after looking at all these different things and taking into consideration changes that we foresee or changes that we might wonder about. We've tried to put down a series of recommendations. And of all those recommendations, there's already committees in place, town committees in some cases, and/or maybe they'll have a special subcommittee of a sort be created to deal with each one of these things and refine that recommendation. The recommendation, and in many cases, Bob, is very broad, but it's a recommendation that says, you know, this is kind of the direction that you should go in, and maybe we should be thinking about improving this, or putting sewers here, or doing this sort of thing there. Maybe that would benefit the community as a whole, and maybe it would, and that's pursued. Or maybe for some reason that's not a priority, so that's nobody works on that for a while.
So I think it's like Bill Blodgett said in '98, he said, this is just a plan.
Right.
This is just to do something to satisfy whoever, and then we go from there through the whole process. So maybe I shouldn't be talking about marking up stuff, but I always write things down, and that's why I wondered if it was all right to do that or not.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You have that right.
So, okay, page 14. I had, it says a responsible party, and it says select board, and we just had this thing about, and it's to do with our shellfish committee, adequately fund their operational budget. It says responsible party select board, and we know that's the shellfish committee.
Oh, you want to correct that?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I was looking at.
Gotta correct it to Shellfish Committee.
Right.
Where are you, Max? Are you writing it down? Okay.
We're pretty adamant about that, so it's kind of.
So you're
Yeah,
saying
we-
to take away the
Yes.
select board?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just did a general thing, if it has to do with funding.
Yeah, right, I understand, but that's, and she talked about that tonight.
Yeah.
You know, it's all cool to say that,
So
so.
we can change that.
Yeah, okay. And,
Gotta make a note of that.
I mean, I can give you what I have anyway.
Give it to Max. Give it to Max. You have to give it to Max.
Yeah, give it to
Well, I think we
Max
gotta
after
vote on them, though.
mark it.
Well, that's what I thought we might
We have
have.
to
You
vote on
guys
them.
have to vote on it. yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
But we still
whole
have to
package.
discuss it.
So procedurally, how,
I think any changes, I think we gotta vote on, don't we?
Yeah,
and
you
that's
do.
probably what I'm asking.
Yes.
I asked that to start with, if we're good, what do we do? Because I wasn't sure, it's been a while.
you want to do it one by one, Clint? or do you
Yes,
wanna-
well, I'd like to take care of that right now. Is everyone good? I think Ed is
Cross
right
off the
with
word
that.
select board, is that
Yeah.
what you're saying?
Can we
Okay,
just do
Just
that?
as simple
Yeah.
as that?
Yeah, I move that the reference on page 14 be
Okay.
to, as regards the Shellfish Committee,
And I wrote down an
be
independent
to
organization.
the Shellfish
so I'll
Committee
just leave that.
budget, sorry, to the reference to the Shellfish Committee budget or funding, refer to the Shellfish Committee as the responsible party,
Yes.
not the select board.
Okay, so that's a
the
motion.
Yep.
I'll second it.
Discussion? All those in favor? And if I go to 17, then probably I shouldn't even bother with it, but it just, I don't know, it probably don't matter. But it says responsible party again. It's planner, but
Was, a lot of that
Page
was guessing,
17?
so what's that one for?
is it Public Works?
Public Works?
Yeah.
For the,
With the planner maybe? I don't know.
what are you talking
Which,
about?
which one are you on?
Number 7, page,
The town will
17.
continue to advocate for road and infrastructure improvements, Route 132. It just made sense to me.
I think what happens is, do we do that through the planner usually?
I don't know. I don't know.
Improvements through, for what, the roadways?
Yeah,
That's normally through Public Works.
that's what I'm saying,
Okay,
and
so we
it's
got
all
some of
planner
that stuff
stuff.
wrong.
Two of them in a row
Okay,
should be
so-
Public Works,
But I
because
don't
we
see
just went
anything
through
Public
it,
Works,
that's why.
right.
Yeah.
Well, it says Public Works Director / planner.
Oh, it's a slash there,
Well,
No,
comma
no.
planner.
comma planner.
I don't have a problem with them being both.
No, down below there, these are
responsible
different
party.
ones, I think.
Yep.
It's the next two,
The
Julie.
ongo, oh,
Yeah, I would
That
say
should be-
planner and Public Works Director.
so that should be the same.
Yeah.
And the same for the next one.
Yep.
You guys have to vote on that, so this is what
Right.
I have to go for.
So, are we good with that?
What's your motion?
Just to add Public Works Director, or take planner off, I don't know.
Just add Public Works Director to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? So it's pretty much the same for the next one. Did you saying all of them individual? I'm just asking. Yes, okay. Do I have a motion on the next one? It's the same thing.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were doing both at the same time. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Okay. That was it for that.
You all set?
I shouldn't read. Sorry. I'm good.
Well, then I'd like to make some.
Go ahead.
For a few
Take your time.
few minutes here too then. I'm just reading off my notes here. I had that one about adequate funding for the Shellfish Committee too. On pages 14 and 15, where there's a discussion of the, let me get to the page here. I guess we could probably do it around the middle of page 14, where the responsible party is the planner and the planning board. Reference to use the beginning with habitat maps and other resources when reviewing development applications to identify sensitive environmental areas. I'm not sure what beginning with habitat maps is.
Yeah,
It's a capitalized term.
Yeah, that is a natural resource mapping series of maps by the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. and Maine
DMR.
DEP, yeah, DMR.
DMR's got one.
And it illustrates, there's a series of maps, usually 6 or 7 of them, and it illustrates your natural resources, whether they're wetlands, erodible soils, habitats for wildlife and plants and animals, things like that. It provides a lot of good source data. So if you're, you're developing a piece of property, it's like a first source that you would go to find a general overview of what may, what environmental features may be on your property. It's just a good planning tool
Okay.
for the most
All right.
part. Yeah, and we've capitalized that.
Okay,
That's
as long
It's
as
actually
people
a
know what it
tool.
is.
It is a tool.
It's a tool, yeah.
All right.
And we have full-size maps, and they're also available online, so you can go and, they're PDF maps, they're PDF online, so you can zoom things in and out, copy them, so you can zoom in just on your particular parcel and things like that.
Okay. There is a reference to recycling and so forth, and there's a specific reference to Lincoln County on page 19, Lincoln County recycling. And yes, today we're with Lincoln County Recycling for recycling, but we also have Fiberite out there, and we have the Municipal Review Committee. And I thought those terms ought to be included in that wording. It is on page 19, and there's no number here, so it's difficult to find it.
It's like the third one down.
Is it the third one down?
So.
Yep.
Yeah, the town, in cooperation with Lincoln County, the Municipal Review Committee, and Fiberite.
Do you really want to name them specifically?
Yeah, because they're with us for the next 20 years.
What if they change their
They're the
names?
guys we have the contract with. So,
Or their successors?
or their successors or assigns, yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Anything else, Bob?
On page 24, there's a reference to guidelines for home occupations, and to update them. Well, maybe that's my reference, not the reference in the plan.
Occupations.
Let's see. It's one of the bulleted items.
And what's it about?
It would be, maybe it requires specific mention. I would have liked to see something in there to the effect that you'd update the guidelines for home occupations to permit small businesses to grow in size and number of employees while respecting the needs of neighbors for privacy and quiet enjoyment of their property.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
It didn't say that?
I don't think so.
Okay, that sounds exactly what it's.
I'm looking for it.
Okay.
It's one of the
I
bullets.
can't find it.
I can't, it would be a bulleted item on page 24.
They're all bulleted.
Yeah, it
24,
would
yeah.
be an additional bulleted item on that page.
Oh, this is an additional one?
Yep, and
Oh, you
Max
wanted
has the
to
wording.
add that?
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I'd like to
Oh,
add
no
that.
wonder I can't find
Yeah.
it.
But they say it's here, but it's not.
Well, we have language like that.
We had that
about-
discussion.
It might be in another spot.
It's probably in
Could it
another.
be under
It could be
housing
under
or?
something else.
Yeah, it's prob,
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Land
Is
we
there a
did talk
section in
about
here
that
for
in a
home
different.
occupations itself?
No, I don't think,
I don't think
But there was
so.
a part on
I mean,
zoning.
you
that
specifically mentioned some things in this
Right.
part of the plan, and
And-
I think that's important enough to specifically
Yeah.
mention, that's my only point.
I think Bill is the expert on the formatting of the part one.
I'll work with you on that. Yeah, I don't remember,
Thank you.
I don't remember specifically home occupation.
I know you've had some.
Oh, we didn't,
talked about it.
we talked about it,
Yeah.
but I don't know if we ended up stating it as a
No, I don't think we did.
directive,
No.
but we
We
talked.
can't, Bob, can you send me that language?
Max has it on the tape, but I'm happy to send it to you.
All right.
Yep.
Oh, that's right, I forget the tape, sorry.
That's all I've got.
Wouldn't that wait to the implementation committee, Bill?
I would think so
rather than,
Well, this is a new bullet item, so we don't reference anything, so.
but to have a specific, you know, just home occupations versus all the other types of things that need to get changed in the ordinance, is that
Yeah, we didn't,
strange to have it all by itself?
yeah, we mostly were trying to be as broad as possible, but we do list specific things, so we can certainly add that, you know. I don't think. I'll
We
defer
wouldn't have
to-
an objection. It's nice wording.
Sandy?
what you do best.
It's gonna be here in a minute when
I'm sorry?
you get your language the way you want it, so we can do that
Yeah,
motion
I'm
for.
good. Yeah, those are the three things I would hope the board would agree to
Okay.
add or amend.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Anything else, Bob?
Sir?
Anything else from the board? Anything from the public? Ms. Sable, or?
You go first? I'll go first.
Yeah.
I'm nervous, so I'll get this over with. My name is Kristen Grant. I'm a resident of Dutch Neck. My family's lived in Waldoboro for over 20 years. Some of my comments tonight are really precipitated by video I saw, LCTV, and I get confused about the meetings that I've been at, but I think it was a meeting maybe on April 7th. So I want to first say that I appreciate all the hard work that the town committee members donate to the town of Waldoboro, and I believe that you all have the best interests of the town at heart. But I take exception to the characterization of the Dutch Neck community that has occurred in some of the meetings that I've been in. In each meeting, our neighborhood has been portrayed as selfish, elitist, and desirous of gating themselves off from the rest of Waldoboro. In the last meeting, which the town manager joined, our neighborhood and a specific individual was disparaged. I've been around long enough to know that no matter where you go and who you deal with in life, there are going to be some people who are outliers in behavior and attitude. Dutch Neck is no exception to that. While my dad would be thrilled to learn that I live in an exclusive neighborhood that is too busy going on vacation to take part in town votes, I think a short drive down that road would give the lie to that characterization. There are some nice houses on that road to be sure, but in my daily walks up and down, I mostly see working people like myself, many of them shell fishermen, who live in modest homes and who care about the neighborhood and the town of Waldoboro. To my mind, it is just as bad to portray all Dutch Neckers as a bunch of snobs as is to portray all Clammers as a bunch of speeding litterbugs. Perhaps it is even worse, because I feel like this characterization of Dutch Neck is being used to disenfranchise us from discussion about the future of the landing. I believe that the residents of Dutch Neck are capable of providing thoughtful and constructive input into discussions about the landing. As Jan, you were talking at the beginning of the meeting. Sometimes you got to step back, and I believe that there are residents of Dutch Neck that are capable of doing that and capable of providing unbiased opinions. And that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, go ahead.
I'm here at this meeting because I love my community in Waldoboro. I've lived on Dutch Neck nearly 20 years. I'm Elaine Abel, in case you didn't know. The river is an important piece of why I love this town. I use it recreationally both in the summer and the winter time, and I'm well aware of how fortunate I am to have found my little bit of paradise. I've read and reviewed the comprehensive plan that's before you, and in addition, I've listened to and taken notes from the comprehensive plan committee meetings, and I have a few comments about the plan that you're going to put forward. At the March 29th public meeting, there were a number of people in attendance and who wrote letters in opposition to the portion of the plan that recommended changing the town-owned property on Dutch Neck from residential to maritime commercial fisheries. It's apparent from the meeting of April 3rd that the committee heard what was said. There was a 22-minute discussion about it in which there was thoughtful discussion about keeping the land wild, using it for recreational area, and perhaps creating a committee which included Dutch Neck residents, clam diggers, and other segments of the community to discuss how they envisioned the property to be developed or not developed. It ultimately led to a decision to remove that section of the reg so it didn't imperil the voting down of the entire comprehensive plan that the committee worked so hard and long on. I was pleased that they wanted to bring people together for a more thorough discussion. It looked and sounded like democracy in action. Then, Julie, you walked into the meeting, and the entire tone of the meeting changed. You stated that you thought the committee was listening to the segment of town that was opposed to it. You stated that it was a public park and not about the neighborhood. It was a NIMBY thing, and if you spoke to people outside the area, they wanted it developed. You didn't want the area to be gentrified. One member stated that the committee should recommend that they put low-income housing on the residential part to see how we like that. In response, another person said, oh, but do you want a certain individual on your back? The same person said, well, there's a henchman in the group. Somebody said, I think we should ask the Darling Center if they want a satellite office on that piece of property. One member asked if there were enough people on Dutch Neck to vote it down, and in response, a committee member said, luckily, they will all be out of town. Interestingly enough, in an earlier meeting, when a committee was discussing home occupations, a member mentioned a selectman's business. She was shushed by a committee member and told, we don't talk about that, while another person said, it's a wonderful business. If we like it, it's okay. Ultimately, the committee voted to change their minds and included this section on page 23. The existing shoreland district boundary designated for marine activities at the Dutch Neck Marine Park is recommended to extend beyond the 250-foot setback from the water line. So all they took out was the part that said the entire parcel. That's not much of a compromise, in my opinion. It's been stated numerous times by members of the committee that the neighborhood reaction is based out of fear of the unknown, and that we don't truly understand that this document is just a recommendation. That isn't accurate. The comprehensive plan, if adopted, is more than a recommendation. It's important because it defines the mindset of a town if and when there are land or zoning disputes. And that's extraordinarily important to me as the adjacent property owner. Members of the committee stated that the commercial fisheries maritime activity zone is more restrictive than the residential zone. I disagree. Commercial, industrial, governmental, and institutional uses are all permitted by planning board approval. Single and multifamily homes are not permitted. I'm pretty confident that most people would prefer a house next to them than a commercial or industrial building. I don't have a fear of the unknown. I do have a fear of being told half-truths. I was told an aquaculture project was being considered at the landing and the neighborhood would have input. I was assured by the town manager that nothing would move forward if the neighborhood wasn't on board. The neighborhood had input. We were vilified and chastised at a public meeting. We were told we were closed-minded and elitist. I was told that there'd be a slide presentation by a prominent scientist. The neighborhood showed up, thoughtful questions were asked, and there were few answers. The numerous jobs promised were less than 6. The scientist had no history in successful ventures that I could find, and the project that was touted by the town as one of his successes was actually a complete failure and dubbed the $1 million monster by the city where it was built. That city was left with an albatross and financial problems after that debacle. My fear is based on history. We're opening up the door to sacrificing one of Waldoboro's best assets. More discussion needs to happen and more thought needs to be put into this. Moving forward with this version of the comprehensive plan will cement the us versus them mindset, which in my mind creates a lose-all situation. Working with the neighborhood will ensure a vision that will be environmentally and socially acceptable. So I'd like you to take out that section of the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Now, just so I get this right, is page 23
Yes.
Because I read it says the existing shoreland zoning districts are retained, and then it says the existing shoreland district boundary designated for marine activities at the Dutch Neck Marine Park is recommended to be extended beyond the 250 setback. I remember the person here, I thought, I don't know, maybe I'm not thinking about it, but everyone was in disagreement with all of that, I thought. Remember the person here about the, what was it, aquaculture or something, wasn't it? Yeah,
What are you talking
remember.
about?
Yeah.
Wasn't that about Dutch Neck?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. So, isn't this different? And I don't know.
I'm not sure whether this is a,
I don't know what you're talking about.
and maybe the committee can clarify it.
Yeah, I need to know.
It was just, it was changed instead of changing the entire marine park into a single zone like the landing. It was to maintain, but if there needed to be any kind of adjustment for, and I think we talked about a committee, a townwide committee, working on that, and if they came up with, in the world of like recreation or
I think the
parking lot. Yeah, it had to do with
also uncovered
parking lot.
sea level rising. It's like here you have a zoned area for fishing that's on the waterfront. And if you were to try to do anything to enhance that capability within that correct zone, that, who knows, 10 years from now, you might have to set it back a little further. We were concerned that anything that might be done, you wouldn't want it visible from the water. So that was part of our discussion, is to make it so it wouldn't be visible from the road, wouldn't be visible from the water. So you'd want that marine designated area to be a little bit larger so that things could be set back. And again, this is all, we don't really know what to envision that might be needed there or wanted. It could be something where if you're, what are those upwellers where you're growing clams or something, who knows what other future things may be going on there, and you might have something where you store it, and you want it to be on the marine designated part of the zoned part of the property. So there may be, and our thought was, well, gee, 250 feet isn't much. If you put something there, you'd be able to see it from the water, and that wouldn't be necessarily attractive.
The topography was an issue too. If you had to put something,
Because it's
there was a
also
lot
like
of, right, if they were
follows
going
the
to
road.
put an outhouse or change the parking in any way, that topography
Well, that would make sense.
governed-
I mean,
govern a
yeah.
lot of that. But it wasn't to make anything.
And again, this is all a recommendation that it be extended, that area be extended. How much? It depends. And again, that may be something that it's in the plan, but nothing would happen until such time as some new thing was being talked about or some
What you are
potential change.
proposing is taking a 20-acre piece of property that is zoned residential and recommending that commercial and industrial use be put on that property. If any person in this town that owned residential property put forward a motion in the middle of a residential area to change their property to commercial industrial, there would be an outcry.
Well, I think what we're talking about in the plan is that this is a property that has two zones attached to it. And the initial zone that is the working zone could be extended in the future if that were needed. So I don't think anything would happen unless some need arose.
Except
If
for-
something happened, then you'd say, well, let's put together some, and then we talked about a committee. Let's have other people, a group of people decide. But you would like to have the entire paragraph struck from the?
I would like that paragraph struck because I think that sets up the town to say in the future, going for a zone change, and if there is a lawsuit. I've been on the other side, I've been a zoning officer, I've been a land use person for 12 years. And they go back to the comprehensive plan and they say, this is the mindset of the town. So we always envisioned this to be commercial maritime activity. When at the meetings, you had almost probably 24 people opposing that. So that isn't the vision of the town. That's the vision of a small
Yeah.
number of people.
That's why you vote on it.
Yeah.
I might just quickly on this whole thing. I do want to emphasize that the comprehensive plan is recommendations, and I believe in that meeting I was discussing the committee and how we need to include Dutch Neck residents such as yourself, recreation individuals. I think Ed was going to talk about that just a minute ago.
Oh, about to, yeah.
As well as members of the shellfish community. That's what I was
Yes,
getting
and
at.
I think that was a tremendous idea. It was wonderful.
But that was still part
That's
of
still part of it.
that one bullet point, because
Yeah.
while this is talking about recommendations, that's just it. It's recommendations. The responsible party would still have to be needed to implement the thing. Select board has to go through with funding and different appointments and different committees, even the one that I suggested. And that very bullet point you're speaking about, that would have to go to the planning board for them to get approval for it.
So change the bullet point to say, we want to have a committee to discuss future plans of the Dutch Neck Marine.
Can someone please read the exact language from it?
Yep, it says, the existing shoreland district boundary designated for marine activities at the Dutch Neck Marine Park is recommended to be extended beyond the 250-foot setback from the water line.
So it's just recommend. The town would still have to decide how they want to go through that, if they want to go through it.
And
It's
if-
merely a recommendation.
And if they go through it and it passes through a town vote and it gets appealed by an adjacent property owner, the court then comes back to the comprehensive plan and they say, the mindset of the town is this.
Well, if it's passed by the town.
Yeah, I'm
If
confused.
it's passed by the town.
I was confused for just a second there. So if this was approved on June 12th, June 12th, and the next day someone was to sue the town? Or are you saying?
No, I'm saying if it goes through
To the
a
planning
zone
board.
change, if
Okay.
it goes through a zone change. Although it could, if it goes, passes, I mean, after tonight,
If the marine district is extended in the future, then a neighbor,
And that's
then
the,
a suing situation might come up, I think is what she said.
okay, I was confused.
because you're
Yeah.
defining the mindset of the town when that's not the mindset of the town.
We
I
don't
think
know
what-
what it is. We don't know
What
that.
has to happen is that when it's like saying, we're gonna move a line 20 feet or something like that. It's, at some point, that number is arbitrary until we assign some meaning to it. So what has to happen, if you wanted to extend that, you have to come up with some logic, some reason. There has to be a discussion. It just has to happen.
I understand, but you are making the assumption that the town wants that line moved. You heard at least 24 people at meetings saying they don't want that line moved.
Yeah, no,
So you're making an assumption, and that assumption is in the comprehensive plan, which I'm asking to be removed.
I'm not arguing with you, and all I'm saying is that would be the process. for
I
that to
understand the process of it, but you're making a huge assumption in that.
And we-
Just like you want home occupations clarified, I want that taken out because that assumption is false. There was, I think, one person at a meeting that wanted that spoke in favor of it. And you had the entire Dutch Neck community and members off of Dutch Neck saying they didn't want that to happen.
And that's why we revised it the way we did, so that it still suggests to move beyond 250, just not the entire town parcel, and let's
Have
the
that
select
discussion.
board create a committee or do whatever they want to do to come to that number.
But you're still making an assumption that we want it moved. We don't want it
Making an
moved.
assumption.
Or I don't want it moved. You can ask the neighbors, maybe they want it moved, but I hadn't heard anybody at any meeting saying they wanted it moved. In fact, it was probably, they were pretty vocal saying that they wanted to keep the
It's just a
residential.
recommendation.
The Conservation
Yeah.
Commission would like to see more trails and more recreation in that
I guess
area.
That's the thing
Yeah,
about the
there are.
Conservation Commission, Because this lady,
Yeah.
who are you? What's your name?
Elaine Abel.
You're not an adjacent landowner.
I am
Yes,
an
she is.
adjacent.
How close to you are you?
Right
Right
next
next
to it. I am
door.
right next
Are you
door
right
to
next
it.
door? I thought it was
That
the,
cute little house.
Oh, the cute little house, that's great. But anyway, the Conservation Commission is in theory in charge of Dutch Neck Marine Park, and we're putting in trails and things. Out of the 5 members of the Conservation Commission, 1 lives on Dutch Neck, 1 lived there for 10 years. And I personally want to keep it wild forever, and I would personally strike that line out of the thing. But I'm not sure if since the town wants to do that. But we are certainly working, and if you want to come to one of our meetings and talk to us, we can talk about what you want to see down at Dutch Neck. But right now, we're putting in picnic tables and trails, and that's as far as I would like to see it.
Right, but the town, I think, has, obviously, the town has different motives, because they brought in a developer.
We are the town.
I mean, the Conservation Committee isn't the town. The Conservation Committee, I think, has different motives than perhaps Julie, and so.
Well,
We're a town committee.
Yes.
The motives,
Sworn in and everything.
I think we're getting far afield. We brought in a developer, if you want to call him that. A scientist who had a proposal that never got further because we never got it further to even explore it. So, you know, it was a very trying time, and it left, and I mean, I had a conversation with a person today, and I said it was a trying time, and it was a very nasty time. It got personally nasty, directed at me, and I will say, I've said it before, I've said it publicly, because I say it publicly, and I know I'm recorded, so I don't have a problem with defending what I say. What was represented in letters was not what was always represented in person, to me and others. And, you know, it's nice to sit here and say I wrote a nice letter or stand up in public and be nice. It's not exactly what happened. And so, yes, it left a very bad taste in my mouth. It really did. And I'm not just the man, I manage the whole town. And you're right, there's not a lot of people here saying they have an issue with it, because you're here, because you have an issue with it, because you live there. But what we got from the feedback from that, and what I got in my office, and people calling and running into people and talking to people at church and at Hannaford, is a very different picture. That we have to, well, the select board and whoever's on a committee has to consider. It's very easy to sit there and say, this is what I think because I live there. And I totally get that. But you're right, the town, the great thing about Maine is that people get to vote on it. And you're right, 24 people showed up at a meeting and voiced their concern from a specific neighborhood. The whole town will get to vote on it. That's the beauty of Maine, is that's one of the things that makes it great. It's not really up to the 5 people sitting here. It's up to the entire town to vote on these things. And that's unique and wonderful, I think. And you're going to get a feeling of what the town believes. I hear a lot when I'm out. I do. And you know, there is an us and a them. It's not something, and that's not something Julie started. You know, that goes back 20 years with a secession attempt. You know, that's not a Julie thing. You know, I didn't create that. And many of you probably didn't create that. That was before your time. But, you know, that mindset exists. That's not something Julie created. Julie definitely did say that it wasn't the most pleasant experience of her life. But I think that we have to be mindful that when you say the public will vote on it and the public will decide it. And I just don't want anybody to think, you know, we went out and purposely got a developer. I don't know what the future of Dutch Neck was. We explored one possibility. The possibility might be that A.D. Gray is not the place for a community center, whether it's raised or not, and it might be down in Dutch Neck. That might be the right place for it, and maybe that's what this committee will figure out. But I think that the committee did a good job of trying to figure out, not only with that, they looked at Pine Street Landing, and I think they were trying to make it comparable to what Pine Street Landing is. But we don't have that many water access points that are town-owned, and we have to look at that. And, you know, we're going to explore options, and I think it's incumbent upon the town fathers to look at, and mothers, to look at what options are out there, so.
I just found it very interesting that the committee had voted to pull that out. and after 22 minutes of discussion.
We actually
We-
didn't.
we
vote
Well, you
to
didn't
pull it
vote.
out.
I mean,
No,
No,
we
no,
never
we
did.
actually
No.
didn't even suggest to pull it out. We suggested the part where we were going to suggest a
The
committee look at it specifically, like when the person donated the land up by the quarry, and we had a long town process on how we were gonna use that land as a community, because we all own it. And so, and I think what you're referring to is that after we started to.
Then I came in.
Well, yeah, and then.
Well, what
And I was
happened
asked.
was, Ed, you brought up, let's not poke the bear, why are we gonna jeopardize
Right.
the entire
Sounds like it.
That
comprehensive
was my
plan?
opinion.
And everybody's like, oh, are you in agreement? And then you walked in, and
I was asked, what do you think about a committee? And I'm like, I think we have too many.
I think that you have a great comprehensive plan. I agree with Ed, don't poke the bear. I think that there is the potential of it being voted down, and I can tell you, I'm gonna work very hard to bring
But then,
awareness to this.
but then the public has spoken, and what a better exercise of democracy.
Well, I differ. I would rather see people work together and rather than it be divisive like it has been. I would much prefer them getting a committee, and if extending the 250-foot area is, if it's extended, let's go forward mutual together and do it. And whether it's in the comprehensive plan or not, it can still happen. We're not saying it won't happen.
But if it's in the
It can
comprehensive plan, the
We're
committee
not
can
saying
still go. I guess it's really your choice.
Can I just make a quick point?
There's two.
The 250-foot setback that's there now, it allows, that particular zoning designation allows that piece of property, land, to be developed, I think, up to 70% of that. That would be a huge visual blight if anybody going up and down the river to have it developed that hard. And that's in the regulations, that's what you can do. By pulling the line back, it gives you options to, if you are going to have some kind of something going on in that property on the water edge, you can pull it back and have it there and still have the sort of a green edge to your river experience, and it's just going to look better rather than being all of a sudden a very densely built situation, which under current zoning, that's what one could do there. So pulling it back just gives you the options to better plan that piece of property visually, scale, everything else. Having that dividing line, having those two different zones, and that thing just makes it really hard to do anything intelligent and beautiful on the site.
Eileen?
I always thought a comprehensive plan was some goals, some things to look at for the community in the future. This idea of already designating 250 feet, blah, 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 why isn't the bullet just, we need to look into, the uses of the marine park, period. And then a committee's formed, if there were recommendations to go to the planning board to change the land use ordinance, that all happens. But a simple look at the uses currently and in the future for the marine park. And it would, to me, what you guys are suggesting now could be looked at through a committee, but it keeps it very simple, and to me, it keeps, it doesn't specifically say anything, because I didn't think a comp plan really usually said specifically anything. They're broad goals, things to look at for the future. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Bob?
I would agree with what you're saying, but only amended in one way. And that is to emphasize that that property is town-owned and that it is there for the future planning of the town.
Well, right.
However that,
I think
however that
everybody knows it's
occurs. Yeah,
town-owned, but
yeah.
if you need to be specific that way.
Exactly.
But it's just that it should be a very general, we need to, we suggest that, looking at the uses for
Yep.
the marine park, which is a town-owned property,
But
period.
I do take Barbara's point about the visual from the
Well,
river.
right.
Well, that, yes.
I-
You know,
that's something
when
that's really
we travel
important.
down the river and see some
Yeah.
industrial kind of a thing.
Because it's much
as
better for me to look in from my living room and see an industrial.
Well, I don't know if it is either way, but like I say, if we keep it generic.
But that's
to
assuming,
people to
it's,
look
that's
at it.
assuming
Yeah.
it's, this is what I get, we're not, I don't assume it's gonna be an industrial facility.
We got nothing to
No.
put there at this
I
point.
wouldn't
How
think
can we
about
assume
that.
anything?
No, but, you know, and I can only go by my history, and I go to the meeting at the Dutch Neck Community Club, and all of a sudden, a 15,000 square foot building is being shown to me. Like,
Well,
what is
yeah.
going
There's
on?
a lot of stuff that weren't done. I mean, originally that marine park had a saltwater pool, bathhouses.
Yeah.
There was a beautiful plan for things to go on down there 40 years ago now, or whatever, maybe it's even 50 years ago now. That didn't all happen, you know, for whatever reason. So again, keep it simple, that we think that, you know, the uses for or of the marine park should be reviewed as, you know.
It certainly makes sense.
Yeah.
And I have a statement too about the aquaculture thing. There was a presentation of an idea of what might happen, and there was a discussion of, shall we go forward with research to see what kind of impact, what kind of feasibility, does this even make sense? And the response of the neighborhood absolutely allowed them to voice their opinion and to make it a change, but their next step was just gonna be research. They were just looking to say, well, let's do a feasibility study, let's verify that this is even reasonable, let's see what size would you really need, and how much would it really take to put this here, and what about bringing power down? I mean, there were all these many steps of things that needed to be researched before you could do anything. It wasn't they were showing you a picture because it was gonna be built tomorrow. They were saying, we have this idea,
It's a picture
wow.
that could be in the future, I think that's.
But it was
the
like,
point.
wow, this is an idea, what do you think? Should we even go ahead with the research? And you basically said no, so that's what happened.
And I think Adam said you can't do anything that involves the shoreline or the water.
Correct.
So, I mean.
Without the shellfish committee being
That's right.
involved.
That's how the shellfish
The
committee got
Darwin
involved,
Island
is
concept.
because we made sure that it was not gonna be discharging into the river.
We have a lot of hoops that things would have to.
Right, and that was, like you
protect.
said, it was the grant going forward, and
Yeah.
that was that meeting that we had here, and it was to see if we could use, you know, somebody else's money to make the grant go forward and actually look at it, and I think in the end, you know, the effort failed, and, you know, that happens.
I would just like to, maybe as a suggestion, scratch this language, add Eileen's, put us all on the same page moving forward on the plan. Does that sound feasible?
I'd just like to make one comment about the comprehensive plan is, it's a pretty good representation of the town of Waldeboro. With the exception, it's heavy on Dutch Neck. We have two of our members from the comprehensive plan they're from Dutch Neck, so they would take those issues when they were making those decisions. But we also had, you know, people from downtown and other outlying areas east Waldeboro, and so we represent the town, not a neighborhood, and we're looking at the bigger picture for the town.
Yeah, I understand that,
yeah.
I think you did a good job. I think
And we
it was-
weren't looking
I think
at-
it's a difficult job, but if you look at the community visioning goals, some of the goals, a lot of the people were talking about the river and how they should have
I was
undeveloped
on that.
shorefront.
I was on that
And
committee.
how they wanna preserve
we'd like some.
views, and the
Yeah.
Dutch Neck, and
I live on the
backbone
river. I
communities.
live on the river. I know about views.
So,
And my views have been changed because of
But just so
businesses.
you know, all of
That's all
that
right.
past work we did as a community, the visioning process, the downtown village master plan, all of that was included.
Yep.
Language from all those recommendations were included, language from every focus group that we held, which I think were 9 focus groups, all of the recommendations from the coffee klatches, and anything that people brought to us.
right, and I think that one sentence undoes
I
undoes
wish, I
that.
will only say this once
Well,
though,
we
because,
changed it.
just because, but I really, really wish that somebody had come and sat down with us long ago about this. It would have been much more helpful, you
Sandy?
know, because that would have been really part of the process then.
Hi, I've been on the comprehensive plan for the Irish reporting, and I understand the comprehensive plan is you look at the whole district, ideas that you wanna look at, ways of developing the town of Waldeboro. to say 250 square feet or whatever, that implies there's a reason for that amount of land. I can see putting down that you develop it and look at it, but to put a specific amount of acreage or land or anything implies that there's intention with that acreage. Why would you come up with that amount?
It's a zoning law.
The existing 250 is what's already designated as for marine
Yeah.
use.
Yeah, I
We were
understand that.
suggesting that it may be increased.
Moved back.
We didn't
We
say
didn't come up with
250.
that.
It is what it is, and we're asking that that be extended, or that one would
You guys
consider
still have
extending it
assessors
should you ever need to do something in that area.
Maybe. So, again, I could say it again if you want to do that.
No.
I don't think you have any
The
takers.
select board can
What?
do it.
Well,
That's up to them.
I
I don't mind the way it is.
trying to compromise here,
Don't
do
think-
something.
I don't think you have takers.
So it already has a 250-foot setback.
Oh, that is what it is.
It is, yeah,
It's
that's,
two zones in
that's
one
the-
piece of
It's
Yeah,
property.
residential
so it
and
is.
marine zoning. One
Yeah.
piece of property has two zones.
Two zones.
And we were trying to get closer to making it one thing because it's town property.
Well, that was the original thought, but then
Yeah.
the other
And
thought
we
was.
thought, okay, well, there's a lot of other ways to
Doesn't
look
matter.
at it, so let's
Doesn't
look at
matter,
it.
really, doesn't matter.
Well, I think it makes sense to have a concept about it before we start talking about specific ideas.
Right.
So the town has decided in general what the purpose of the property is. Is there a way, and I guess in a sense, we've done that. We're just enhancing that statement a little bit with this sentence. Bill? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
If you're going to change it, I'm just gonna throw some language out there. Put it together. Develop a plan for the future of the Dutch Neck Park, respecting the existing marine and recreational uses of the town. So-
Perfect. That's lovely.
Love it.
And that way, it allows us to come to grips with that and flesh this all out at a further time.
How's the,
Something like
does
that.
Can we ask the committee how they feel, those, the members of the committee who are here?
Wait, does that just basically say we're gonna make a park there?
No.
recreation?
No, that says we're respecting what exists already.
Based on what's already there. We allow marine activities in the first 250, and, it's all recreation allowed through the whole thing, so this would come together and try to, and we would ask the question, do we want to, how do we balance the two activities? Do we want to expand one, contract one? Everything should be on the table for discussion. But at least that way it, it flushes out more,
Sir.
Man.
Ma'am, sorry.
Sorry.
My bad.
I like my baseball.
I got this all in. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But I'm not a Red Sox fan. I hope that doesn't offend anyone.
Now you hit it.
My name is Elise Wright, and I'm a resident of Dutch Neck. And I just wanted to say, how lucky I am to live there. And I feel that the marine park is underutilized by the community as it is. I think there are ways to enhance the use of the marine park to access the water, to make it more hospitable to kayakers, for example, or for people in other neighboring communities who don't have access to the water and would like access to the water there. One of the things I read in the comprehensive plan was that it's hard with all of the private residential property to get to the water. And I understand why that landing is so important to the clammers. So I would, and Ed, is it Ed, you were talking about trails. I mean, I would, and I'm sure I would be joined by my neighbors on Dutch Neck to make that property more vital and to give more people access to the river and all that the river has to offer. So I just wanted to stand up and go on the record and say I'm committed to serving the town and helping that property become more valued and used by the town.
With a little bit of luck, we'll have the picnic tables in within a month. We can get Johnny.
Sign me up.
Okay.
Yep.
We gotta get you down there. This place has to be utilized. One of the things that George Seaver said when he said we're doing all these picnic tables and things, and he said, is anybody gonna go there? And I said, I hope they do, and we gotta make sure they do.
And I can walk.
Okay.
I'll walk there.
Do you know that there's a geocache down there?
A what?
I didn't know that.
There is.
We're getting way.
Down there in on the
no.
Osborne
We
Finch.
gotta get it
I was gonna say, yeah, the Osborne Finch Preserve, not.
But no, Dutch Neck Landing has one too.
Oh, also?
Yeah,
Okay.
I
So I
can't find it,
guess-
I've been down there 6 times.
I guess we're ready to move forward. Is everyone good with Bill's motion? That makes
I
sense.
move,
And scratch this one?
Yeah, I move
Okay.
acceptance of Bill's suggested language, which is recorded.
Yeah, can you hear it again?
Bill can
I
read
just
it.
wrote it down. Develop a plan for the future of the Dutch Neck Marine Park, respecting the existing marine and recreational activities at the town park. Is that acceptable?
It's no
I'm
different
good.
really than what we have.
Have a second?
It just doesn't talk about any
No.
zoning changes.
Yeah, and all this other stuff.
No, it didn't.
Right, the other one didn't.
The other one didn't either.
I know, the other one didn't either.
Okay, was that a second, so we can move right along?
I suppose I will.
Okay. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Is that opposed, Jan? or you-
No.
Okay. Okay, anything else?
The census. No, I'm not senseless, but-
I'm not even gonna say what else I had. I'm not gonna say a word.
All right.
Okay. Any other comments or discussions? Okay.
So have we accepted this plan to put on the warrant? Have we
I'm
had
saying
that?
yes, we gotta have a
We
motion
can
to
have,
do
yeah,
That's what he wants a
okay.
motion for.
Okay,
Can someone do that?
yes, I move that we okay this to go on the warrant.
Is that a second,
As
Katie?
amended? As amended, Jen?
Yeah, well, we already amended it.
As amended?
Second.
Okay. Discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.
Because he's gonna fly out of here.
I know it, he's gonna, no, he's getting kicked out.
Wait another 3 years.
I said you're gonna fly out, I said you're getting kicked out.
10.4, act on 3 foreclosure property.
My, Bill? Okay. I have my camera.
Anyone got anything to say about that? Foreclosure properties? Julie?
There are 3 properties that were on here. One is for $137.09. Another is for $342.69, and the other one is for $782.71.
So what are they?
We're going to start, Eileen.
The process. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Two of them are mobile homes only, sitting on other people's land. One of them was foreclosed on last year. And I think it was asked of Stan and Carol to check and see if there was someone still living in it. And the actual property owner, if they now acquired it or whatever when they bought the property. The third piece is actually 43.5 acres of land on Kastner Road. And I think the direction normally Rose looks for now is, do we put these out for seal bid, or what direction
The
does?
families are all notified, or?
Well, they would be if.
Okay, I get it.
Right.
I mean, they've gotten their notices.
They've gotten
about
lots of
foreclosure,
notices.
They got
Yeah,
their
right.
Okay.
additional 30 days to come in and pay it all, and nothing has happened
Nothing.
on that. So this is when it goes out to bid, and the policy says that they still have right up until the night that you guys slam the hammer down and say sold to so-and-so. If the money comes in before 5 o'clock or 4:30 that day, it gets given back to the property owner.
So we're at that stage?
Yes, we're at that stage. And because it's after April 1st, they do have an additional year to pay, so they're a little higher than what usually floated around.
Well, but that's what I had on
Yeah, I
the,
think
that's what she
that-
gave me.
That's what Rose gave you?
That's what Rose gave me.
Okay, that was before probably April 1st.
Bob?
I move that we proceed with foreclosure against, I'll give you the count numbers, if that's appropriate. 1422, 3097, and 1998.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
That was as of 4/3.
Yep. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. No executive session, is there?
No, but you have assessors.
You have to stay here.
No, we don't.
You have to